Erev Tov and good evening, everyone. We are doing Zera Shimshon on Parsha V'etchanan this evening, and we're going to take a look. We're doing Os Test, section number 9. The daf in the sefer itself is Shin Dalet, daf Shin Dalet Os Test. Just before we start, we're going to take a look at a pasuk from the Aseres HaDibros as they are presented in our Parsha. And this is the pasuk that deals with the mitzvah of Kibud Av Ve'em. Perek Hey in Sefer Dvarim, pasuk Test Zion says as follows: Kabedes avicha v'yasimecha, honor your father and your mother, ka'asher tzivcha Hashem Elokecha, the way Hashem has commanded you, lema'an ya'arichun yamecha, in order that your days should be lengthened, ulema'an yitav loch, and in order that it should be good for you, al ha'adama asher Hashem Elokecha nosei loch, on the land that Hashem gives you. Okay, so that's a pasuk that's going to be significant for us when we learn this piece in the Zera Shimshon, as you'll see. And now let us begin. So the Zera Shimshon starts with a Gemara from the Maseches Bava Kama, very unusual, interesting quote from the Gemara is coming up. Kama Perek Hey. So Maseches Bava Kama in the 5th Perek. Shol Rabbi Chanina ben Agil Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Rabbi Chanina ben Agil asked Rabbi Chia bar Abba a question. Mipnei ma b'dibros harishonim lo ne'amar bohen tov. How come in the first set of the Aseres HaDibros the word tov is not mentioned? The word tov does not appear. Good, the word good, tov, does not appear in the Aseres HaDibros when they're presented, when they were presented to Moshe the first time, as we see them back in Parshas Yisro. Ubedibros ha'achronim, and in the second set of the Aseres HaDibros, as we see them presented here in Parshas V'etchanan, ne'amar bahen tov. It does say the word good, and what's being referred to here is the pasuk we just read regarding the mitzvah of Kibud Av Ve'em. Again, just to read those words: Leman ya'arichun yamecha uleman yitav loch, in order that your days should be lengthened, and that it should, in order that it should be good. Yitav. There's the word tov, a form of the word tov presented here. However, that is not the way that word is not used in the first Dibros, and not even in the mitzvah of Kibud Av Ve'em, because as we know, there are some differences in the language between the Aseres HaDibros as we see them in Parshas Yisro and the Aseres HaDibros as we see them in Parshas V'etchanan. So the question that's being asked is, how come the word tov appears here, but it doesn't appear? It did not appear in the first set of the Aseres HaDibros. Amar lo. So Rabbi Chia bar Abba said back, Ad she'ata sho'alani lama ne'amar bohen tov. Before you ask me why it says the word good, sha'alani im ne'amar lahen tov. You should ask me, does it say the word good? Im lo, or not? She'eni yodea, because I don't know. So it seems like Rabbi Chia bar Abba is being a very modest and humble person, and he's saying, listen, you're asking me a sophisticated question. Why does it say the word tov in one place and it doesn't say the word tov in another place? Meanwhile, you should have asked me a much more basic question. Does it in fact say the word tov or not? Because I don't know that. My familiarity or my memory of the psukim is not so exact that I even remember whether or not the word tov appears, when it appears, or whether it appears in the different versions of the Aseres HaDibros. So Rabbi Chia bar Abba tells him, I can't answer your question. Ela kalech etzel Rabbi Tanchum. But what you should do is you should go to Rabbi Tanchum, v'chule, etc. So the Gemara relates, Azar legabe v'chule. So he went to him. He said, I got to get an answer to my question. So he went to Rabbi Tanchum. Rabbi Tanchum said to him, Amar lo hoil v'sofon lehishtaber. The word tov did not appear in the first set of luchos because they were destined to be broken. Since they were destined to be broken, Rabbi Tanchum said the word good did not appear in them. And then the Gemara asks, V'chi sofon lehishtaber mai have? And because they were going to be broken, so what? Meaning, okay, they were going to be broken, but all the other words appeared there. all of the other lofty, holy, and words with incredible kedushin, incredible meaning were in the Aseres HaDibros and were written there, even though they were going to be broken. So how come the word tov, only one word, there's only one word in the whole world that couldn't be written there? How come the word tov couldn't be written there just because they were going to be broken? So the Gemara answers, Chas v'sholom poska tova min ha'olam. Because God forbid, had the word good been written there, and had the luchos been broken, then perhaps the whole concept of good, the whole capacity of good in the world, and to exist in the world and to be in the world might have ended at that point. So that's how the Gemara leaves it, a very cryptic Gemara, as we said, an unusual and cryptic statement by the Gemara as to why the word tov appears in the second luchos but doesn't appear in the first luchos. So the Zera Shimshon is going to discuss this with us now. First, he's going to start with his questions. Hamamar hazeh tamua. This piece of Gemara is strange. De'ech misafgale im nemar bahen tov im lav. How could it be a suffix? How could it be a doubt? How could it be unknown to Rabbi Chia bar Abba whether or not in the Aseres HaDibros it says the word tov or not? V'chilo kara Aseres HaDibros miyamav. Is it possible that he never read the Aseres HaDibros? He wasn't familiar with the Aseres HaDibros and didn't know exactly what it said there. So that's question number one. How could Rabbi Chia bar Abba say it's good to be humble, but such humility is kind of shocking? How could he say, I don't know what it says, whether it says the word tov or not in the Aseres HaDibros? Ve'od, and more so, leisei safra v'lechame. Let him bring a sefer Torah and look, right? So the Zera Shimshon says, if in fact he had forgotten, or maybe he was older at this point, he simply didn't remember with total clarity whether the word tov appeared or not. So he's being asked a question. Let him say, okay, let's open a sefer Torah and see if it says the word tov or not, and then he can address the question as to why it might say it or might not say it. So that's question number two. The Od Kash, and another question, the third question, the Ka'amar, Rabbi Chia bar Abba said, Ad sha'ata sho'alani lama nemar bahen tov. He said to him, before you ask me why it says good, he said, you should ask me if it says good. So the Zera Shimshon says, Shenira she'ikr kushyoso hi b'dibros ha'achronim. It seems like Rabbi Chia bar Abba took the main question to be on the way the Aseres HaDibros are presented to us here in Parsha V'etchanan in terms of the second luchos. And he said, before you ask me why it says the word good, and that whole question only applies to the second luchos because it only says good in the second luchos. So it seems like that's what Rabbi Chia bar Abba was assuming the question meant. Why does it say good in the second luchos? Ve'adarabba, just the opposite. Nira she'ikr kushyoso hi al dibros harishonim. It would appear that the real question wasn't why does it say the word good in the second luchos, but rather why did it not say the word good in the first luchos? Lama lo nemar bohen tov. Why did it not say the word good? That's the real question, the Zera Shimshon says. Ubahachi asi shapir haterutz. And if you assume that that was the question, then the answer makes sense because the answer was lefisha sofan lehishtaber, because the first set of luchos were going to be broken. So the Zera Shimshon is saying, wait a minute. The question, the thrust of the question, the primary goal of the question was to understand why the word tov, which did appear in the second luchos, doesn't appear in the first luchos. Since that was the question, the Zera Shimshon says the answer that Rabbi Tanchum gave about the first luchos ultimately being broken, and therefore the word good, tov, could not appear there, makes sense. But when Rabbi Chia bar Abba talked about the fact that he wasn't sure whether the word tov appeared or not, his phrasing, the words that he used about saying you should have asked me whether or not the word good appears or not before you asked me why does the word good appear, seems like he took the question to be referring to the second set of luchos because that's where the word good does appear. And that bothers the Zera Shimshon, and that's his third question. And now he points out, Vehain emes, and actually in truth, Sheharif, Rabbi Yoshio Pinto, in his commentary on the Ein Yaakov, the Perusha, in his commentary on the Ein Yaakov, says, Nira Shahaya Gores Ad Sha'ata Shoalani Lama Lo Ne'amar Bahen Tov. And his gersa of the Gemara, the way he explains this Gemara, it's clear that his text of the Gemara read, why does it not say the word good? Meaning he actually took the question to be referring to the first set of luchos as opposed to the second luchos, which is exactly the way that Zera Shimshon thinks the question should have been understood and should have been phrased. Aval ha-girso shelanu eino kain. But our girsos in the Gemara, our text of the Gemara, is not like that. Our text of the Gemara, and you can see this if you look at this Gemara in Baba Kama and any Gemara you open, you'll see that our text of the Gemara makes it seem like the question is on the Dibros where it does say the word tov, where it does in fact say the word good, which of course is in the second presentation of the Aseres Dibros here in Parsha V'etchanan. So the Zera Shimshon has those three questions. The first two have to do with Reb Chia bar Abba, and could it actually be that not only that he didn't know about the word, whether the word tov appeared, and he also didn't want to take a chumash and look and see, like how it seems like a pretty straightforward, basic question. How could he not either know it or want to look it up? And then the third question, why should the focus be on when the word tov appears, rather the focus of the question should be on when the word tov does not appear? Those are the three questions that the Zera Shimshon presents. Now let's continue. The Yesh Lomar, and we can say the Rabbi Chanina tarte komi boile. Rabbi Chanina, who is the questioner, the one who asked the question to Rabbi Chia bar Abba, he had two questions that he was asking. He actually had in mind two questions, a double question. Shahaya Shoel, first of all, he was asking, Bein al harishonos, Bein al ha'achronos. He was asking a question that applied to both presentations of the Aseres Adibros. Shahare Yadanu She'im Yisrael Lo Hayachotim. Zera Shimshon says, we know that if Klal Yisrael, Bnei Yisrael had not sinned with the Egel, Lo Haya Od Yetzer Hara Ba'olam, then the Yetzer Hara would have been nullified and abolished from the world. V'lo Haya Sa'uma V'loshen Sholetis Bahem. And there would have been no nation and no language in the world, no people who spoke any language in the world who would have any power over Bnei Yisrael. So if Bnei Yisrael hadn't committed the Chet HaEgel, there would be no Yetzer Hara. And also the Jewish people would never, ever be oppressed or subjugated or controlled by any of the other nations of the world. There would be no shibud to any of the other nations in the world. Uchtichsiv, as the pasuk says, and this is a pasuk from our parsha, right after the Aseres Adibros are presented, Leman yitav lahem v'livnehem le'olam, in order that it should be good for them and their children forever. So the Zera Shimshon says those words, when it says it'll be good for them and their children forever, that's a reference to the scenario that he just described a moment ago, which is if the Egel had not happened, then it would have been incredibly good, profoundly good, because again, there would have been no Yetzer Hara, and there would have been no shibud, there would have been no servitude to other nations of the world, and the Bnei Yisrael would have been free to keep the Torah in every conceivable manner and way, total freedom to do the mitzvos and keep the Torah, with nothing impeding them. And the Jewish people would have enjoyed and benefited in this world, like the joy and the benefit and the pleasure that Bnei Yisrael is promised in the next world. That pleasure, that benefit would have existed, and Olam Hazeh would have existed in this world had there been no Chet HaEgel. And it would be true that if that's the way things had happened with no Chet HaEgel, then people would have been rewarded in full for doing mitzvos even in this world, meaning the entire existence of the entire reality of the world would have changed had there been no Chet HaEgel, and this world would have become like Olam Haba in the sense that the reward for mitzvos, we would be able to receive it in this world with no Yetzer Hara, with no enemies, with total peace, with no shibud to any other nations, with no oppression and no subjugation and no anti-Semitism. Everything would have been beautiful and perfect in this world. So the Zera Shimshon says, we know that, and that reality is what the Rabbi Hanina is really asking about, as we'll see here in the next paragraph. And because of this, meaning because when the first luchos were given, and before the Chet HaEgel happened, that's what the future of the Jewish people would have looked like, the situation, the idyllic situation that the Zera Shimshon just described. Because of that, that's what Rabbi Hanina was really not sure about. Vishoel, and he asked, Lama lo ne'amar bohen tov? Why does the word good not appear in the first luchos when they were given, when the first luchos were given? Again, before the Chet HaEgel occurred, the word tov would seem to be exactly the word that should appear in the first luchos, and it should appear many times because the best imaginable good could have happened and would have happened for Bnei Yisrael had it not been the Chet HaEgel. So that's what he's asking when he says, why doesn't the word good appear? If in fact, without the Chet HaEgel, Bnei Yisrael would have deserved to receive the full reward in this world for mitzvos, and not even have to wait till Olam Haba to receive schar mitzvos. The od havekasha leilahefech, and also he had a question in the other direction. After Bnei Yisrael committed the Chet HaEgel, and that means the Yetzer Hara came back in its full strength and its full power. And that created a situation in which we don't receive the full reward for doing mitzvos in this world, but rather we have to wait to receive it in Olam Haba. Lama b'dibros ha'achronim ne'amar bohen tov. Then from that perspective, why did it say good in the second luchos? So here, let us pause to understand what the Zera Shimshon has said. We thought when Rabbi Hanina asked his question, he was asking a straightforward, simple kind of textual question. He's learning the Chumash, he's learning the Parsha. We imagined in our mind, and he sees the word tov in Parsha V'etchanan and the Aseres HaDibros, and he looks back and compares it to the Aseres HaDibros as they're presented in Parshas Yisro, and he sees the word tov doesn't appear there. And he asked, okay, how come? Why? What's the reason that the word tov doesn't appear the first time and does appear the second time? That's how we understood the question. And when Rabbi Chia bar Abba said, I don't know, I didn't even realize that was the case, that's where the Zera Shimshon got all excited and said, I don't understand. The great Rabbi Chia bar Abba doesn't know Psukim and Chumash, doesn't know the Aseres HaDibros, and doesn't even want to look it up. So he comes along and he says, no, you completely did not understand. We did not understand the question. What we need to realize is that Rabbi Hanina is asking a much more important and sophisticated, much more meaningful and sophisticated question. His question is, Mimanav Shach, no matter how you look at the situation, the word tov not appearing in the first Aseres HaDibros is problematic, and the word tov appearing in Parshas V'etchanan and our Parsha in the Aseres HaDibros is also problematic. Neither one, lichora, neither one at first glance makes sense. And again, why is that? How does the Zera Shimshon understand that question? Because when the first luchos were given, the situation and Klal Yisrael accepted the Torah and the first luchos were given, then the reality of the world was going to be full of tov, an amazing tov, a goodness that would compare to Olam Haba, with no subjugation and no problems and no Yetzer Hara. And therefore, Klal Yisrael would be completely free to keep the Torah, do the mitzvos, and receive the reward for those mitzvos right here in this world without waiting for Olam Haba. So the word tov would be the perfect word to appear, but it doesn't appear in the first luchos. And then, as he says, adarabah, just the opposite when it comes to the second luchos, that they're given after Klal Yisrael committed the terrible sin of the Chet HaEgel, and Yetzer Hara has come back in full force, and there is going to be subjugation and suffering at the hands of the nations of the world. So therefore, you would expect the word tov not to appear, but it does appear. So that's what Rabbi Hanina was really asking to Rabbi Chia bar Abba. That's the real point of his question. So now let's continue to understand what happened after the question was asked. V'hu heishiv lo, and Rabbi Chia bar Abba responded to him, she'eno yodea im nemar bohem tov im lav. He said, I don't know if it says the word good or not. Klomar, this is what he meant to say. Not that he was factually unaware of whether it said the word good, but rather, Einu yodea im hatov hamuzkar bedibros ha'achronos. He didn't know if the word good that is mentioned in the second luchos, hu la'olam hazeh, is it referring to good in this world, o la'olam haba, or to the next world. That's what he meant when he said, I don't know. Not that he wasn't aware of the words in the psukim, but on a much deeper level, he was saying, okay, it says tov, it says that it's going to be good for a person who does the mitzvah of kibbud av v'eim, but what does it mean good? Does it mean good for that person and he'll be rewarded in this world, or does it mean it'll be good for that person in the next world? And where does that whole fundamental question come from about the reward for mitzvos in this world and the next world? So the Zera Shimshon quotes the Gemara. Shahare b'per kama di kiddushin. Behold, there's a very important Gemara in the first parak of Maseches Kiddushin. Sfira Leila Rabbi Yaakov, and Rabbi Yaakov in that Gemara is quoted as saying that he holds the schar mitzvos bahai alma leka. There is no reward for mitzvos in this world. A very powerful and astounding statement. Again, Sfira Leila Rabbi Yaakov holds, and as brought down in the first parak of Maseches Kiddushin, the schar mitzvos bahai alma leka. There is no reward for mitzvos in this world. We are only rewarded for mitzvos in the next world. Upligi Rabbanan ale, and the Rabbanan argue with Rabbi Yaakov in that Gemara. V'sfira lahu, and they hold the yesh schar mitzvos bahai alma, that there is reward for mitzvos in this world. We are rewarded for mitzvos in this world. Vestam masnisin depeya kerabanan, and the Gemara over there in Kiddushin brings a stam mishnah which appears to follow the view of the Rabbanan that there is a reward for mitzvos in this world. And here's the quote, very famous mishnah which we know from Birchas HaTorah every morning. Elu devarim she'adam ochlu peruseim ba'olam hazeh. These are the things that a person eats the fruit for doing these mitzvos in this world. And of course, v'chule, etc. Of course, it continues, v'karen kayemis lo lo haba. And then the main karen, the main principle of the reward is remains for that person when they get to olam haba. But the point is, it clearly states that a person eats the benefit, gets some reward from mitzvos in this world. Ukamot Shapira Sham Maharsha, like the Maharsha explains on that Gemara in Kiddushin, Al Rami Le Rava Le Rav Nachman, on the part of the Gemara that talks about a question that Rava asked to Rav Nachman, Va'ayin Sham, and you should see over there. And if we wait to the next paragraph, we'll see a little summary of what the Maharsha says, which is extremely important. Okay, so that now we understand that Rabbi Chia bar Abba, when he responded and said, I don't know if it says tov or not, he also wasn't saying something nearly as simple as it seemed. Rather, he was saying, of course I'm aware of the words, but I don't know of the meaning and the implications of the words. When it says in the second set of the Aseres Adibros, when it says that it will be good for you, does it mean good for you in this world, you'll be rewarded in this world, or does it mean good for you only in Olam Haba? And that is a fundamental machlokas and a fundamental question that is discussed in the Gemara in Kiddushin, and Rabbi Chia bar Abba was saying, that's what I'm not sure about. That's really the pivotal point of what he was trying to say. Ubazeh tiritz lo hakusha al hadibros ha'achronos. So now we understand the answer that's given about the second set of luchos, where it does in fact say the word tov. The aliba de Rabbanan v'stam masnisan, because according to the Rabbanan and the Stam Mishnah from Maseches Peah, in hachinami, we can see that it's true, this schar mitzvos bahai alma ika, that there is reward given in this world for doing mitzvos. Ve'od afilu Rabbi Yaakov lo amar ela b'yachid. And more than that, even Rabbi Yaakov himself, who said that there is no reward for mitzvos given in this world, even he only says that regarding a yachid, an individual person. Aval b'tzibor hazochim. But if you're talking about a tzibor, a group of people who have tremendous zechuyos, they have great merit for the mitzvos that they've done. Afhu modeh, even he, Rabbi Yaakov, agrees, deschar mitzvos b'hai alma ikka, that there is reward given in this world for doing mitzvos. Ve'hein hein kol haYehudim v'hahavtochos, and this helps us understand all of the designations and the promises shal haTorah, which are in the Torah. For example, v'haya ekev tishma'un, when the Torah says, because you keep the mitzvos, you're going to receive all of the following materialistic rewards, we understand that's what it's referring to. It's referring to when a tzibor fulfills mitzvos, they receive reward in this world. When an individual does mitzvos, Rabbi Yaakov still is going to hold that person's reward does not come in this world, but it comes in the next world. And the Rabbanan are going to hold that even for an individual, the reward comes in this world. This is what the Marsha explains, and you should look at his explanation in Kiddushin. And I want to just take a moment now to give a little piece of that Marsha and what he explains. The Marsha focuses on what Rabbi Yaakov says, as the Zera Shimshon just explained it, his position, which is, when it comes to a yachid, when it comes to an individual, all reward for mitzvos is in the next world, not in this world. When it comes to a tzibor, when it comes to a congregation, a group of people doing mitzvos, a group of people who deserve reward for the mitzvos, then it occurs in this world. And that's how we understand why there can be so many places in the Torah when it talks about receiving rewards of things like rain falling and things like crops growing and all of these other things, which certainly seem to be, if we're taken literally at least, certainly seem to be referring to this world materialistic type rewards, ba'olam hazeh, in this world. Why does the Torah talk about that if we never get reward in this world? Because groups of people, congregations do get rewarded in this world if they're faithfully keeping the mitzvahs. But for individuals, that's not the case. So the Marsha says, why would that be, that individuals don't receive a reward in this world, but rather in the next world? Even if it's just an individual who does mitzvahs and keeps mitzvahs, shouldn't they be rewarded in this world and then in addition be rewarded in the next world? So the Marsha says that Rabbi Yaakov's position is as follows, his understanding of the way Hashem set up the world is as follows, that when a person does mitzvahs in this world, Hashem wants his reward to be as full and as pure and as robust as possible. And so what happens is Hashem says, I don't want to reward you with little relatively like trinkets and baubles and relatively unimportant rewards that you could get in this world, that this world is limited to, materialistic rewards. No. In this world, I don't want you to get the rewards. I want to save your reward. Mitzvos are so important, and the schar for doing mitzvos is so important and so precious. I want you to get all of it in olam haba. And even if a person, therefore, has the type of life in this world that is not as comfortable and it's challenging and it's difficult in this world, that helps the person schar in olam haba. Because they suffer in this world, and the Zera Shimshon is actually, we've seen this previously in the Zera Shimshon when he talks about the role of yisur and of suffering in this world, that is something that can purify the person and elevate the person to receive an even stronger reward of schar in olam haba. So that's the Marsha that the Zera Shimshon is quoting from the Gemara in Kiddushin to understand why Rabbi Yaakov insists that individuals, yechidim, don't receive reward in this world. Schar mitzvah b'hai alma leka, there's no reward in this world. But for a tzibor, they would receive a reward. And of course, the position of the Rabbanan is that whether or not you're talking about individuals or groups of people, there is reward in this world. There is schar mitzvah in this world for those people. So now let's continue. Omnam adayin hayetzarech tiritz al hakusha harishona. However, we still need a clear answer to the first question. Lama bedibros harishonis lo ne'amar bohem tov. How come the word tov wasn't used in the first set of Aseres HaDibros? V'omar le, and for that question, Rabbi Hanina said to him, Kalech v'chule, go to Rabbi Tanchum, etc. V'omar le, and Rabbi Tanchum said to him, Ibnei shesofan lihishtaber, because the first luchos are destined to be broken. V'chas v'sholem paska tova, and God forbid if they're broken and they have the word tov written in them, then that could interrupt the benefits and the goodness in this world, v'chule, etc. Shehoil she'elu hadibros in yonam bevadai haya al tovas ha'olam hazeh. The first set of luchos, there's no question that they definitely, if it had the word tov would be referring to good in this world. There would be no discussion. There'd be no machlokas between Rabbi Yaakov and the Rabbanan. There'd be no debate about it. When the first set of luchos were given, as the Zera Shimshon has already explained, the whole goal was that Bnei Yisrael would accept the Torah, accept the luchos on Har Sinai, and the Yetzer Hara would be nullified and beaten, and a period of complete joy and keep shmiras mitzvos, keeping the mitzvahs of the Torah without any obstacles would be ushered in, and reward would be plentiful and bountiful for the Jewish people doing the mitzvos. So for sure it was referring to this world. So once they were broken, hayinu omrim, we would have said, meaning had the word tov been in the first luchos, and then they would have broken, we would have said, alibe de kule alma schar mitzvos b'hai alma leka. Now we see that everyone is going to agree that there can be no reward for mitzvos in this world. That's what we would have thought. Bein leyachid, bein letzibor. Whether or not it would be an individual or whether or not it would be a group, even the Rabbanon would agree that there would be no reward. Why? Because the word tov, had the word tov been in the first luchos, and then the luchos had been broken, that word tov would have been the word that referred to and encapsulated the concept of us receiving total beautiful reward in this world. The luchos would have been broken, and we would have thought, that's it, it's the end of receiving schar mitzvos according to all opinions. V'chas v'sholem paska tova, and that's what Rabbi Tanchum meant when he said, God forbid there would be no good in the world remaining, v'chule, etc. U'mishum hachi lo kosov bohem tov, and that's why it did not say tov, the word good, in the first luchos. So the Zera Shimshon has started with his three questions on this very unusual Gemara that he quoted, that he started with in Maseches Baba Kama, and he's developed his themes, and he's now tied up all the loose ends and answered his three questions, and given us great insights into the whole question of schar mitzvah b'hai alma, whether or not we receive reward in this world or not. Yasher koach to everyone for participating, and God willing, we're looking forward to continue our study of the Zera Shimshon next week.